What if I told you that in 1942, while black soldiers were dying on European battlefields, fighting Hitler's fascism, they couldn't sit at the front of a bus in Montgomery, Alabama? What if I told you that 1,200,000 black men put on American uniforms to defeat racism in Europe, while their own country practiced the exact same racism at home? And what if I told you that these soldiers launched a rebellion so powerful, so threatening to the status quo that the FBI investigated them? The president tried to silence them, and your history textbooks erased them completely. January 31st, 1942, Wichita, Kansas. James Gratz Thompson sat alone in the dim cafeteria of an aircraft manufacturing plant, watching white workers half his age walk past him to build bombers for the war effort. Thompson was 26 years old, educated, capable, skilled. But he wasn't allowed on the factory floor because of the color of his skin. Instead, he served food to the very workers who should have been his equals. Around him, the walls screamed with propaganda posters. Fight for democracy. Defend freedom. Make the world safe. The radio crackled with news of Pearl Harbor, of American boys shipping out to fight tyranny overseas. But James Thompson couldn't vote in 7 southern states, couldn't eat in most restaurants, couldn't drink from the same water fountain as a white child, couldn't sit where he wanted on a city bus. That night, Thompson went home to his small apartment. He lit a candle, he picked up a pen, and he wrote a letter that would ignite a movement of 1,200,000 soldiers, a movement the government feared more than the Nazis, a movement they spent 75 years trying to erase from your memory. What happened in the next 3 years changed America forever. It integrated the military before schools were integrated. It gave birth to the civil rights movement a decade before Rosa Parks. It proved that patriotism and protest are not opposites, they are partners. But they buried this story. They removed it from textbooks. They silenced the witnesses. They rewrote the narrative, until now. This isn't just history. This is the blueprint for every civil rights victory you know about. This is why the military desegregated in 1948, 5 years before Brown versus Board of Education. This is why Rosa Parks had the courage to refuse to move to the back of that bus. This is why your grandfather could register to vote. This is the origin story of black resistance in the 20th century, and they deleted it from the record. By the end of this video, you will know the real reason America integrated its military. You will know why the FBI investigated the Pittsburgh Courier newspaper. You will know how 50 black sailors were convicted of mutiny for demanding safety after 202 of their brothers died in an explosion caused by negligence. You will know the names of the warriors they erased, and you will never see Veterans Day the same way again. After this video, you'll understand why 1,200,000 black soldiers came home from World War II and refused to accept Jim Crow anymore. You'll understand why the government feared black veterans more than they feared the enemy. You'll understand why your grandfather's generation sparked a revolution and why they tried to bury that revolution under 75 years of silence. If your grandfather served in World War II, he lived this. If your grandmother worked in a defense plant during the war, she survived this. This is not ancient history. This is your history. This is your family's story. This is your stolen legacy. And today, we're taking it back. Let me be clear about something. What you're about to hear will make you angry. It will shock you. It will break your heart. But it will also make you proud. Because your ancestors didn't bow. They didn't break. They fought 2 wars at once abroad and at home, and they won both. The system tried to erase them because their story is too powerful. Their courage is too dangerous. Their victory is too threatening to the lie America told itself about freedom and democracy. So let's begin where it all started. With one man, one letter, and one question that shook the nation. James Gratz Thompson was born in 1916 in Wichita, Kansas, into a world that told him he was less than human. He grew up during the Great Migration, when millions of Black Americans fled the terror of the South, searching for opportunity in northern cities. Wichita was supposed to be better than Mississippi, supposed to be freer than Alabama. But freedom is relative when you're Black in America. Thompson was smart. He finished high school, which was rare for Black men in the 1930s. He found work where he could. By 1942, America was at war. Factories were desperate for workers. Defense plants were running 3 shifts, 24 hours a day, building planes and tanks and ammunition. The government launched a massive propaganda campaign. Every able-bodied American was needed. Your country needs you. Democracy must be defended. Thompson applied to work on the assembly line at Boeing's Wichita plant. He was qualified. He was willing. He was rejected. Not because he lacked skill, not because he was too old or too weak, but because Boeing, like most defense contractors, refused to hire Black workers for anything except menial labor. Cleaning, serving food, hauling trash. The work nobody else wanted, so Thompson served lunch to white workers who were younger, less experienced, less educated than him. And every single day he walked past those propaganda posters. Fight for freedom, defend democracy, make America proud. December 7th, 1941. Pearl Harbor, everything changed. President Franklin Roosevelt declared war on Japan. Days later, Germany and Italy declared war on the United States. America mobilized. Young men flooded recruitment centers. The draft began. Black men lined up to serve just like white men. But when they arrived at those recruitment centers, they were separated, segregated, told they'd be serving in all Black units under white officers. Told they'd mostly be doing labor construction, cooking, not combat. And still they signed up. 1,200,000 Black men volunteered or were drafted into the United States military during World War II. Think about that number. 1.2 million. They put on the uniform of a country that treated them as second-class citizens. They swore an oath to defend a nation that wouldn't let them vote. They prepared to die for freedom abroad, while being denied freedom at home. Why? Why would they do that? Some believed service would earn them respect. Some thought fighting fascism in Europe would end fascism in America. Some had no choice, they were drafted. But many, many Black Americans saw the war as an opportunity to prove their worth, an opportunity to leverage their service into civil rights, an opportunity to expose the hypocrisy of fighting racism in Germany while practicing racism in Georgia. This was the world James Thompson lived in on that cold January night in 1942. He sat in his small apartment with a pen and paper, and he asked himself a question that millions of Black Americans were asking. Should I sacrifice my life to live half American? He wrote that question down. He kept writing. The words poured out. Would it be demanding too much to demand full citizenship rights in exchange for the sacrifice of my life? Will things be better for the next generation in the peace to follow? Would it be asking too much to demand full citizenship rights? Thompson folded the letter. He addressed it to the Pittsburgh Courier, the largest Black newspaper in America. He mailed it. He didn't expect much. Maybe they'd publish it. Maybe they wouldn't. Maybe a few people would read it and nod in agreement and move on with their lives. He had no idea he'd just lit a match in a room full of gasoline. January 31st, 1942. The Pittsburgh Courier published James Thompson's letter on the front page. The headline read, "Should I sacrifice to live half American?" The letter struck a nerve. It didn't just strike a nerve. It detonated a bomb in the consciousness of Black America. Within days, the Courier's offices were flooded with responses. Thousands of letters poured in from Black Americans across the country. Veterans, factory workers, teachers, preachers, mothers. They all said the same thing. Yes, exactly. This is what we've been feeling. This is the question we've been asking. Should we fight for a country that won't fight for us? The editors of the Pittsburgh Courier saw something bigger than one letter. They saw a movement waiting to be born. Robert L. Vaughn had founded the Courier in 1907 and built it into the most influential black newspaper in the nation. By 1942, the Courier had a circulation of over 200,000 readers every week. It reached black communities in every major city. It was the voice of Black America. Van had died in 1940, but his successor editor P.L. Prattis understood the power of Thompson's letter. He called an emergency meeting with his editorial team. They debated through the night, and they made a decision. They would turn Thompson's question into a campaign, a movement, a rallying cry. They called it the Double V campaign. V for victory. 2 victories. Victory over fascism abroad. Victory over racism at home. The logo was simple. 2 V's overlapping, forming a powerful symbol. Democracy at home, victory abroad. That was the slogan. On February 7th, 1942, exactly 1 week after publishing Thompson's letter, the Pittsburgh Courier launched the Double V campaign on its front page. The editorial explained the mission. We call for a Double V campaign. Victory over our enemies at home, and victory over our enemies on the battlefields abroad. We believe this is the hour for all good Negroes to demand their full citizenship rights, without compromise or equivocation. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Black Americans didn't just read about the Double V campaign, they lived it. They wore Double V pins on their jackets. They sang Double V songs in their churches. They formed Double V clubs in their neighborhoods. Barbershops displayed Double V posters. Beauty salons held Double V meetings. Churches organized Double V rallies. Within 2 months, the Double V campaign became the largest organized black political movement since Reconstruction. It spread to every major city with a black population. Chicago, Detroit, Philadelphia, New York, Los Angeles. Black newspapers across the country joined the campaign. The Chicago Defender, the Baltimore Afro-American, the California Eagle. They all amplified the message. But here's what they don't tell you in history books. Here's what they erased. The Double V campaign terrified the United States government. President Franklin Roosevelt was furious. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover was paranoid. Military leaders were panicked. Why? Because the Double V campaign directly challenged the narrative America was selling to the world. America told the world it was fighting for freedom and democracy. America told the world it was defending human rights against fascist tyranny. But Black Americans were saying, wait a minute. You're fighting racism in Germany while practicing racism at home. You're fighting for freedom in Europe while denying freedom in Mississippi. You can't have it both ways. If this war is really about democracy, then we demand democracy too. Right here, right now. The government saw this as sedition, as disloyalty, as undermining the war effort. J. Edgar Hoover ordered the FBI to investigate the Pittsburgh Courier. Agents were assigned to monitor the newspaper's offices. They read every article. They attended Double V rallies. They compiled lists of names. They built files on organizers. The FBI labeled the Double V campaign as dangerous Negro agitation that could inspire race riots and hamper military morale. In the spring of 1942, Roosevelt personally called the editors of the Pittsburgh Courier. The conversation was not recorded, but the message was clear. Tone it down. Stop criticizing segregation in the military. Stop demanding civil rights. Wait until after the war. Don't divide the nation during a time of crisis. The Pittsburgh Courier faced an impossible choice: continue the campaign and risk being shut down by the government, or comply and betray the 1,200,000 black soldiers fighting overseas. They chose a middle path. They reduced the prominence of double V articles in the summer of 1942. The front page logo appeared less frequently. The editorials became more cautious. By 1943, the official campaign had quieted in the pages of the Courier. But here's the thing they didn't understand. Here's what they couldn't control. The Double V campaign wasn't just a newspaper slogan anymore. It was a philosophy, an identity, a lens through which Black Americans saw the war and their place in America. You couldn't shut that down with an FBI investigation. You couldn't silence that with a phone call from the president. The Double V spirit lived in the hearts of 1,200,000 black soldiers. And those soldiers took that spirit with them to Europe, to the Pacific, to every battlefield where America fought. So let me introduce you to some of those soldiers. Let me tell you about the warriors who embodied the Double V, the men who fought two enemies at once, the heroes they erased from your textbooks, starting with the most famous unit you've probably never heard of, the Tuskegee Airmen, 1941. Tuskegee, Alabama. Deep in the heart of Jim Crow country, the United States Army Air Corps opened a flight training program for black pilots. This wasn't done out of kindness. This wasn't progressive thinking. This was done because the NAACP and black activists had been pressuring the government for years, and because America needed every pilot it could get. The program was segregated, of course. Black pilots trained at Tuskegee Army Airfield, completely separate from white pilots. The town of Tuskegee enforced strict Jim Crow laws. Black cadets couldn't eat in white restaurants, couldn't stay in white hotels, couldn't even walk on certain streets after dark. They were training to defend America, and America treated them like criminals. The military didn't expect the program to succeed. In fact, many military leaders hoped it would fail. There was a widespread belief stated openly in military reports that black men lacked the intelligence, the discipline, the courage to be combat pilots. This wasn't just racism, though it was absolutely racism. It was policy. It was doctrine. The military genuinely believed black soldiers were inferior, but 992 black men proved them catastrophically wrong. The Tuskegee Airmen became the most decorated fighter group in American military history. Let that sink in. The men who were told they weren't smart enough, brave enough, disciplined enough, became the best. The first class of cadets began training in 1941. The instructors were tough. The standards were high. The failure rate was steep. But the men who made it through weren't just good pilots. They were exceptional. They had to be. They knew the whole country was watching. They knew that if they failed, it would be used as proof that black men couldn't fly. So they didn't fail. In March 1942, the first 5 black pilots earned their wings. Captain Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. led them. Davis was the son of Brigadier General Benjamin O. Davis, Sr., the first black general in the United States Army. Benjamin Jr. had graduated from West Point in 1936. He endured 4 years of silence. Not a single white cadet spoke to him except when required by duty. 4 years of complete social isolation. But he graduated, 35th in a class of 276. Now he was leading the 99th Fighter Squadron, the first all-black fighter unit in American history. They trained on P-40 Warhawks, then P-47 Thunderbolts, then P-51 Mustangs, the most advanced fighter plane America had. They trained for months. And in April 1943, the 99th Fighter Squadron shipped out to North Africa. They saw their first combat over Tunisia, then Sicily, then Italy. And they were good. Really good. But the white commanders didn't trust them, didn't believe in them. The 99th was assigned mostly to ground attack missions, strafing enemy positions, destroying trucks, and trains. Important work, but not the glamorous dogfights the white squadrons got. Then came the accusation. In September 1943, after months of combat, a report came down from higher command claiming the 99th Fighter Squadron was underperforming. The report said black pilots weren't aggressive enough in combat, weren't shooting down enough enemy planes. The conclusion: black men didn't have what it takes to be fighter pilots. Benjamin O. Davis Jr. was furious. He flew back to Washington, D.C. to testify before the War Department. He brought combat reports. He brought mission logs. He brought evidence. And he made his case. The 99th wasn't underperforming. They were being given different missions than white squadrons. They were being judged by an unfair standard, and even by that unfair standard, they were succeeding. The War Department reviewed the evidence. Reluctantly, they admitted Davis was right. The accusations were dropped. And in 1944, the military did something unprecedented. They expanded the program. 3 more black fighter squadrons were created: the 100th, the 301st, the 302nd. Together with the 99th, they formed the 332nd Fighter Group. Over 450 black pilots deployed to Europe. And they became legends. The 332nd Fighter Group flew bomber escort missions. Their job was to protect American B-79 and B-24 bombers on their way to targets deep in Germany. German fighters would swarm the bombers, trying to shoot them down before they could drop their payload. The escort fighters had to keep the Germans off the bombers while not getting shot down themselves. It was the most dangerous job in the air war. The Tuskegee Airmen painted the tails of their P-51 Mustangs bright red. They became known as the Red Tails, and they became the most requested escort group in the entire European theater. Here's why. Other fighter groups would sometimes abandon the bombers to chase German planes and rack up kills. Fighter pilots wanted to be aces. They wanted glory. So they'd break formation, chase a German fighter, and leave the bombers vulnerable. The Tuskegee Airmen never did that. Never. Their mission was protect the bombers, and they stuck to it with absolute discipline. The Red Tails flew 1,578 combat missions. They destroyed 112 enemy aircraft in the air. They destroyed 150 more on the ground. They damaged 619 railcars, 40 locomotives, and 96 enemy vehicles. They sank 1 German destroyer with fighter aircraft alone, which is almost impossible. But here's the statistic that made them famous. The legend says the Tuskegee Airmen never lost a bomber to enemy fire. Not one. That's not entirely accurate. They lost about 25 bombers over the course of the war, but that was still the lowest loss rate of any escort group. Bomber crews would literally request the Red Tails by name. They'd say, "We want the black pilots, because those boys will bring us home." Think about the irony. White bomber crews who probably grew up in segregated towns, who probably believed black people were inferior, were begging for black pilots to save their lives. And those black pilots did. Over and over. They saved thousands of white lives. And when those bombers landed safely back at base, the white crew members would sometimes try to find the Red Tails to thank them. But the Red Tails couldn't enter the same officers' club, couldn't eat at the same table, couldn't even shake hands in public in some places. The Tuskegee Airmen fought 2 wars. In the air, they fought German pilots. On the ground, they fought American racism. And they won both. But let me tell you about another unit. A unit that didn't fight in the sky. They fought on the ground, in tanks. And their story is even more brutal. April 1st, 1942, Camp Claiborne, Louisiana. The 761st Tank Battalion was activated. 6 white officers, 30 black officers, 676 black enlisted men. They were given M5 Stuart light tanks, then later upgraded to M4 Sherman medium tanks, 30-ton steel machines with a 75mm cannon and 3 machine guns. Louisiana in 1942 was as Jim Crow as it gets. The camp was segregated. Black soldiers lived in separate barracks, ate in separate mess halls, used separate facilities. When they left base on Liberty, they couldn't enter most of the town. Restaurants refused them service. The town's white residents made it clear they weren't welcome. But the 761st had something most black units didn't have. They had a white commanding officer who believed in them. Lieutenant Colonel Paul Bates was a rare man for his time. He didn't just tolerate his black soldiers, he respected them. He trained them hard. He pushed them to be the best. And he fought the system to get them the recognition they deserved. For 2 years, the 761st trained in Louisiana, then at Fort Hood in Texas. 2 years of brutal training. Tank warfare is complex. You're coordinating a crew of 5 men inside a cramped metal box that's moving at 25 miles per hour over rough terrain, while people are shooting at you. The driver can't see where he's going without the commander's directions. The gunner can't hit the target without the loader feeding him shells. One mistake, and everyone dies. The 761st trained harder than most white tank battalions because they had to. They knew they'd be judged more harshly. They knew one failure would be blamed on their race. So they trained until they were flawless. And then in October 1944, they finally shipped out to Europe. They landed at Omaha Beach in France 3 months after D-Day. The beach was still covered in wreckage, blown up landing craft, destroyed tanks, debris from the invasion. The 761st drove their Sherman tanks off the landing ships and onto French soil. On November 1944, they entered combat. They were attached to General George Patton's Third Army. Patton was legendary, aggressive, ruthless, brilliant, and complicated when it came to race. He didn't believe black soldiers were equal to white soldiers, he said so publicly. But he also said he didn't care what color you were, as long as you killed Germans. When Patton inspected the 761st before their first battle, he stood in front of the assembled battalion and said, "Men, you're the first Negro tankers to ever fight in the American Army. I would never have asked for you if you weren't good. I have nothing but the best in my army. I don't care what color you are as long as you go up there and kill those Kraut sons of bitches. Everyone has their eyes on you and is expecting great things from you. Most of all, your race is looking forward to your success. Don't let them down, and damn you, don't let me down." It was a backhanded compliment wrapped in racism, wrapped in genuine respect. That was Patton. But here's what matters. The 761st didn't let him down. They fought for 183 consecutive days. Read that again. 183 days of continuous combat without a single day of rest. That's 6 months straight. Tank crews are supposed to rotate out of combat regularly because the stress destroys men. The noise, the fear, the exhaustion watching your friends die in burning metal coffins. Most tank battalions fought for a few weeks, then pulled back for rest and refit. The 761st fought for half a year without stopping. They fought across France, through the towns of Moyenvic, Vic-sur-Seille, Morville, Les Vic. They punched through German defensive lines that white units had been stalled against for weeks. They advanced so fast that Patton's headquarters had trouble keeping up with their position reports. Then came December 1944, the Battle of the Bulge, Hitler's last major offensive on the Western Front. German armies smashed through Allied lines in Belgium, creating a bulge in the front that threatened to split the Allied forces in two. The 101st Airborne Division was surrounded in the town of Bastogne. They were running out of ammunition, out of food, out of time. Patton's Third Army was ordered to wheel north and relieve Bastogne. It was a desperate race against time in the middle of winter, and the 761st Tank Battalion was at the tip of that spear. They fought through snow and ice. The Shermans weren't designed for winter warfare. The engines struggled in the cold. The tracks slipped on ice. The crews inside froze. But they kept moving. On December 26, 1944, Patton's forces broke through to Bastogne. The 761st was among the first units to reach the surrounded paratroopers. In January 1945, the 761st fought in the Battle of Tillet. 11 Sherman tanks against the 113th Panzer Brigade, an elite German armored unit. The Germans had better tanks. The Panther and Tiger tanks outgunned and out-armored the Sherman. A Sherman's 75mm shell would bounce off a Tiger's frontal armor. But a Tiger's 88mm gun could punch through a Sherman like it was paper. The 761st used tactics instead of firepower. They used speed and maneuver. They flanked the German tanks, hit them from the sides, where the armor was thinner. The battle lasted for hours. When it was over, the 761st had destroyed multiple German tanks and forced the rest to retreat. The Americans lost 9 Shermans, but they won. In March 1945, the 761st broke through the Siegfried Line, Germany's supposedly impenetrable defensive barrier on its western border. They were among the first Allied units to enter Germany itself. And then on May 5, 1945, they liberated Gunskirchen, a subcamp of the Mauthausen concentration camp in Austria. The tankers climbed out of their Shermans and saw hell on earth. Thousands of Jewish prisoners walking skeletons in striped uniforms, barely alive. Mass graves. Bodies stacked like firewood. The smell of death everywhere. Staff Sergeant Johnny Stevens of the 761st later said, "We had been fighting for months. We had seen terrible things, but nothing prepared us for that. We thought we were fighting for freedom. When we saw that camp, we understood what freedom really meant. We understood why we were there." The men of the 761st liberated over 3,000 prisoners that day. They gave the survivors their own rations because the prisoners were starving. They called for medical help. They documented the atrocities. And they understood, maybe for the first time, the full evil of what they'd been fighting against. By the time the war ended in May 1945, the 761st Tank Battalion had fought through France, Belgium, Luxembourg, Germany, and Austria. They had been in combat longer than almost any other American unit. They had earned 391 medals, including 1 Medal of Honor, that wouldn't be awarded until 1997, 52 years after the war ended. But here's what you need to understand. When those tankers came home, they came home to a country that still wouldn't let them eat in most restaurants, still wouldn't let them vote in most southern states, still wouldn't let them buy a house in a white neighborhood. They had fought 183 days straight against fascism in Europe, and now they had to fight fascism in America. One of those tankers was a man named Sergeant Warren G.H. Cressy. He single-handedly destroyed multiple German positions, saved his unit countless times, and was recommended for the Medal of Honor. He didn't receive it. Why? Because the Army had an unofficial quota system. Only a certain number of medals could go to black soldiers. Cressy died in 1973 without receiving the nation's highest honor. His family is still fighting for recognition. The 761st Tank Battalion didn't receive a Presidential Unit Citation until 1978, 33 years after the war ended. By then, many of the men had died. They never got to see their unit officially recognized for what they accomplished. But let me tell you about another unit, the 92nd Infantry Division, the Buffalo Soldiers, who fought in the mountains of Italy. And one soldier in that army who would become more famous for breaking a different kind of barrier. His name was Jackie Robinson. The 92nd Infantry Division was nicknamed the Buffalo Soldiers, a name that dated back to the black cavalry regiments that fought in the Indian Wars after the Civil War. In World War II, the 92nd was composed of 15,000 black soldiers, most of them infantry. They were sent to Italy in 1944 to fight in one of the most brutal campaigns of the war. The Italian campaign doesn't get as much attention as D-Day or the Battle of the Bulge, but it was a meat grinder. The Germans had fortified defensive lines across the mountains of northern Italy. The Allies had to attack uphill through mud and snow against entrenched positions. It was slow, bloody, exhausting work. The 92nd Infantry Division fought on the Gothic Line, the Germans' main defensive position. They attacked German positions in the Apennine Mountains. The terrain was so rough that tanks couldn't operate. Everything had to be done by infantry climbing mountains, under fire, taking bunkers one by one. The 92nd faced something other units didn't face: sabotage from within. Not from the black soldiers, from their white officers. Many of the officers assigned to the 92nd didn't want to be there. They saw it as a punishment assignment. They didn't trust their men. They didn't lead effectively. And when things went wrong, they blamed the black soldiers. Reports came back to headquarters claiming the 92nd was underperforming, claiming black soldiers were cowards who wouldn't fight, claiming they had high desertion rates. None of it was true. Studies after the war showed that the 92nd's performance was comparable to white divisions in similar conditions. But the narrative had been set. The 92nd Infantry Division was labeled as a failure, and that label stuck for decades. The truth is, the 92nd Infantry Division fought hard battles and took heavy casualties. Over 12,000 men were killed, wounded, or went missing. They cleared German positions that white units had failed to take. They advanced when they were told to advance. They held when they were told to hold. They did their job under impossible circumstances, with inadequate support and hostile leadership. But one soldier in the Army during this time would become more famous than all of them. Not for what he did in combat, but for what he did on a bus in Texas. Jack Roosevelt Robinson was born in 1919 in Cairo, Georgia. His family moved to Pasadena, California when he was a baby. He was an exceptional athlete. At UCLA, he became the first athlete in the school's history to letter in 4 sports: football, basketball, track, and baseball. He was a star in all of them. In 1942, Robinson was drafted into the Army. He applied to officer candidate school and was initially rejected because of his race. But then Joe Louis, the heavyweight boxing champion and the most famous black man in America, intervened. Louis used his influence to pressure the Army to accept qualified black candidates. Robinson was admitted. In January 1943, Robinson was commissioned as a second lieutenant. He was assigned to Fort Riley in Kansas, then transferred to Fort Hood in Texas. And at Fort Hood, on July 6, 1944, something happened that would define the rest of his life. Robinson boarded an Army bus on the base. He sat down near the middle of the bus next to Virginia Jones, the wife of a fellow black officer. The bus driver, a civilian contractor who was white, looked in his mirror and saw Robinson sitting next to a light-skinned woman. The driver assumed she was white. He ordered Robinson to move to the back of the bus. Robinson refused. Here's what you need to understand. In 1944, the Army had officially banned segregation on buses within military bases. This was a direct result of pressure from the Double V campaign and civil rights organizations. On paper, Robinson had every right to sit wherever he wanted on a military bus. But the bus driver didn't care about Army regulations. He cared about Texas law, and Texas law said black people sit in the back. He stopped the bus and threatened to have Robinson arrested. Robinson still refused to move. When the bus reached its destination, the driver called the military police. The MPs arrived and confronted Robinson. One of the MPs, also white, tried to intimidate Robinson into compliance. Robinson stood his ground. He explained that Army regulations allowed him to sit anywhere on base transportation. He was polite, but firm. The confrontation escalated. Robinson was taken to the military police station. He was questioned. And then, instead of being released, He was placed under arrest and charged with insubordination, disturbing the peace conduct, unbecoming an officer, and willful disobedience of a superior officer. Jackie Robinson was court-martialed. The trial took place in August 1944. It was a sham. The prosecution tried to paint Robinson as an angry, insubordinate troublemaker who had a chip on his shoulder about race. They brought in character witnesses who said Robinson had a bad attitude. They tried to make it about his personality instead of about the facts. But the facts were simple. Robinson had not violated any military regulation. He had not disobeyed a lawful order. He had exercised his right to sit on a non-segregated bus on a military installation. The defense made that case clearly. The court-martial board composed of white officers deliberated, and in a surprising decision, they acquitted Robinson of all charges. It wasn't because they believed in civil rights. It was because the evidence was so clearly on Robinson's side that they couldn't convict him without exposing the Army to a major scandal. Robinson was released. He received an honorable discharge in November 1944 due to an ankle injury from his football days. He left the Army and went home to California. 3 years later, in 1947, Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier in Major League Baseball. He became the first black player in the modern era to play in the major leagues when he joined the Brooklyn Dodgers. He faced death threats, racist taunts, pitchers throwing at his head, and he endured it all with dignity and excellence. He became one of the greatest players in baseball history. But here's what most people don't know. The courage Jackie Robinson showed on the baseball field he learned in the Army. When he refused to move to the back of that bus in 1944, he was practicing the same discipline he would use on the baseball field. Stay calm, stand firm, don't retaliate with violence, win with excellence. Jackie Robinson's court-martial was a direct result of the Double V campaign. The Army had changed its policy on segregated buses because of pressure from black activists and the Pittsburgh Courier. Robinson knew that. He knew he had the right to sit where he wanted, and he refused to surrender that right, even when it cost him. Years later, Robinson said the Army taught him that he didn't have to accept injustice. It taught him that fighting for what's right is more important than avoiding conflict. And it taught him that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite fear. Now let me tell you about 50 men who showed that same courage. 50 men who demanded safety after watching 202 of their brothers die. 50 men who were convicted of mutiny for refusing to load ammunition onto ships without proper training. This is the story of the Port Chicago disaster. And this is where the pattern becomes undeniable. 1944. Port Chicago, Naval Magazine, California, 30 miles north of San Francisco. This was a military port where ammunition was loaded onto cargo ships bound for the Pacific Theater. Bombs, shells, torpedoes, depth charges. Thousands of tons of high explosives moved through Port Chicago every week. The Navy needed men to load that ammunition. It was brutal, dangerous work. Heavy lifting in all weather conditions, loading live explosives into the holds of ships with nothing but pulleys and muscle. One mistake and everyone dies. So the Navy assigned black sailors to do it. 100% of the men loading ammunition at Port Chicago were black. 100% of the officers supervising them were white. That wasn't coincidence. That was policy. Here's the thing about the Navy in 1944. The Navy was the most segregated branch of the American military. The Army had black combat units, like the Tuskegee Airmen and the 761st Tank Battalion. The Marines had started accepting black recruits in 1942, but the Navy refused to let black men serve in any role except as stewards, messmen, and laborers. Black sailors in the Navy did two jobs. They served food to white officers, or they loaded ammunition. That's it. No matter how smart you were, no matter how educated you were, a servant or a laborer. And the most dangerous labor job in the Navy was loading ammunition at Port Chicago. The men who worked at Port Chicago received no training in how to handle high explosives. None. The Navy assumed you didn't need training to load boxes. But those weren't just boxes. They were bombs, artillery shells, torpedoes with live warheads. One dropped crate could detonate the whole pier. The white officers in charge treated ammunition loading like a competition. They would pit teams of black sailors against each other, seeing which team could load the most tonnage the fastest. They offered prizes extra liberty recognition. They created an environment where speed mattered more than safety. The black sailors complained. They said the work was too dangerous without proper training. They said the equipment was old and faulty. They said the competition mentality was going to get someone killed. They were ignored. July 17, 1944. 10:18 p.m. Two ships were docked at Port Chicago. The SS Bryan and the SS Quinault Victory. 320 men were working that night. Most of them were black sailors loading ammunition. Some were white officers supervising. Some were civilians working on the dock. Suddenly, without warning, the night turned to day. The first explosion was small, witnesses said. A flash. Then 2 seconds later, the main explosion. The SS Bryan was loaded with 4,600 tons of ammunition. All of it detonated at once. The explosion was so massive it registered as a 3.4 magnitude earthquake. It was heard 200 miles away. It shattered windows in San Francisco. The shockwave knocked people off their feet in towns 30 miles away. A column of fire and smoke rose thousands of feet into the air. The SS Bryan vaporized, completely disintegrated. The SS Quinault Victory broke apart and sank. The pier where the ships had been docked was gone. Just gone. The ground where it had stood was now a crater. 320 men died instantly. 202 of them were black sailors. 118 were white, mostly officers and civilians. Another 390 people were injured. It was the deadliest homefront disaster of World War II. More Americans died at Port Chicago than at Pearl Harbor's first wave. But you've probably never heard of it. Why? Because most of the dead were black, and because what happened next would embarrass the Navy for decades. The survivors were traumatized. They had watched their friends die. They had seen bodies torn apart. They had pulled pieces of human beings out of the wreckage. And now the Navy wanted them to go right back to work, doing the exact same job, with the exact same lack of training and the exact same dangerous conditions. The black sailors were given 30 days of survivor's leave. When they returned in August, they were ordered back to Mare Island Naval Shipyard to resume loading ammunition. Nothing had changed. No new safety procedures. No investigation into what caused the explosion. No recognition that 202 men had died because of negligence. On August 9, 1944, 258 black sailors refused to load ammunition. They didn't riot. They didn't attack anyone. They didn't destroy property. They simply said no. We will not load ammunition until we receive proper safety training, and until there is an investigation into what happened at Port Chicago. The Navy threatened them with court-martial. 208 of the men, under pressure and fear, agreed to return to work. But 50 men stood firm. 50 men said no. We will not risk our lives under these conditions. The Navy charged all 50 men with mutiny. Mutiny, the most serious charge in military law. Mutiny means collective refusal to obey orders with the intent to usurp authority. The punishment for mutiny can be death. During wartime, mutiny is an offense punishable by execution. These men weren't trying to overthrow the Navy. They were asking for safety training after 202 of their brothers had been killed by negligence. But the Navy called it mutiny. The trial began in September 1944 and lasted 6 weeks. It was the largest mass trial in Navy history. All 50 defendants were tried together in one proceeding. They were represented by military defense attorneys who who had almost no time to prepare. The trial was held at Treasure Island Naval Base in San Francisco Bay. The prosecutor was Lieutenant Commander James Coakley, a white officer who made it clear he believed the defendants were cowards, using the disaster as an excuse to avoid dangerous work. The judge was Admiral Carlton H. Wright, a white officer who had commanded ships in the Pacific. The jury was composed of white officers. Thurgood Marshall came to observe the trial. Marshall was the chief legal counsel for the NFOMPA. He was already famous for his civil rights litigation. In the 1950s, he would argue Brown versus Board of Education before the Supreme Court. In 1967, he would become the first black Supreme Court justice. But in 1944, he was a 36-year-old lawyer fighting for justice for black servicemen. Marshall sat in the courtroom and watched the farce unfold. He took notes, he interviewed the defendants, and when the trial was over, he held a press conference that made national headlines. Marshall said, "This is not 50 men on trial for mutiny. This is the Navy on trial for its whole vicious policy toward Negroes. Negroes are not afraid of anything any more than anyone else. Negroes in the Navy don't mind loading ammunition. They just want to know why they are the only ones doing the loading. They want to know why they are not given the same training as white sailors. They want to be treated like men." The prosecution's case was weak. They could not prove that the 50 men had conspired together. They could not show that any leader had organized the refusal. They could not demonstrate that the men intended to overthrow authority. What they could show was that 50 men traumatized and terrified had refused to return to work under unsafe conditions. But the verdict was never in doubt. On October 24, 1944, all 50 men were found guilty of mutiny. All 50 were sentenced to 15 years of hard labor in prison. All 50 were dishonorably discharged from the Navy. All 50 lost their military benefits, their right to vote, in some states their futures. The NAACP immediately filed appeals. Thurgood Marshall wrote briefs arguing that the conviction was unjust, that the charges didn't meet the legal definition of mutiny, that the men had been denied due process. The appeals went up the chain of command to the Judge Advocate General of the Navy. In 1946, after the war ended, the sentences were reduced. Some men served 2 years, some served 3, some served 4. By early 1946, all 50 had been released from prison. But they were still dishonorably discharged. They still had criminal records. They still lost their GI Bill benefits, their right to veterans' hospitals, their chance at college, their opportunity to buy a home with a government-backed loan. The Port Chicago 50 spent the rest of their lives branded as criminals. Many of them struggled to find work. Employers wouldn't hire men with dishonorable discharges. They couldn't get government jobs. They couldn't get professional licenses. The Navy had destroyed their futures as punishment for demanding safety. In 1994, 50 years after the disaster, the Navy issued a formal apology. In 1999, President Bill Clinton considered pardoning the Port Chicago 50, but he left office without taking action. As of today, the men have not been pardoned. Their convictions still stand. But here's what I want you to see. Here's the pattern. Do you see it now? The Tuskegee Airmen proved they could fly as well as any white pilot. They were still banned from the Officers Club. The 761st Tank Battalion fought 183 days straight and didn't receive a Presidential Unit citation for 33 years. Jackie Robinson was court-martialed for refusing to sit at the back of a bus on a military base where segregation was already illegal. The Port Chicago 50 asked for safety training after 202 men died and were convicted of mutiny. Every single time black soldiers served with honor, the system punished them. Every single time they demanded basic rights, they were accused of disloyalty. Every single time they proved their worth, the goalposts moved. This wasn't random. This wasn't individual prejudice. This was systematic. This was policy. This was the Second War, the war they fought at home. And now, I need to show you how they covered it up, how they erased this history, how they made sure you wouldn't learn these stories in school. Because the cover-up is just as evil as the crime. But first, if this truth has shaken you, I need you to do something. Comment the word truth below. Hit that like button if you're tired of the lies. Share this video with someone who needs to see it. Because they deleted this from the textbooks. They don't teach this in schools. The only way this story survives is if you spread it. Let me see in the comments where you're watching from. Let's see how far the truth can reach. Now let's talk about how they buried this history for 75 years. The moment World War II ended, a campaign began to erase what had just happened. Not the war against Germany and Japan. Everyone wanted to remember that. America won. America was the hero. America saved the world. But the other war, the war black soldiers fought at home, that war had to be forgotten. The government understood something crucial. If America admitted that 1,200,000 black soldiers had fought 2 wars simultaneously, it would have to admit that segregation was evil. It would have to admit that Jim Crow was fascism. It would have to admit that the same racism they condemned in Nazi Germany existed in Mississippi and Alabama and Georgia. That admission would delegitimize the entire social order of the South. It would empower Black Americans to demand full citizenship. It would force America to actually live up to its promises of freedom and democracy. So they buried it, systematically, deliberately, completely. Let me show you how. First, the FBI. J. Edgar Hoover ran the FBI from 1924 to 1972, 48 years. He was the most powerful unelected official in American history, and he was paranoid about black activism. Hoover believed that any black person demanding civil rights was either a communist or being manipulated by communists. He saw black resistance as a threat to national security. During the war, Hoover ordered surveillance of the Pittsburgh Courier. FBI agents attended Double V rallies and took photographs. They compiled lists of everyone who attended. They opened files on Double V club organizers. They intercepted mail. They tapped phones where they could. They built dossiers on black journalists who wrote about the campaign. The FBI's goal wasn't to prosecute anyone. The goal was intimidation. The goal was to send a message. We're watching you. We know who you are. Be careful. And it worked. By late 1942, the Pittsburgh Courier had toned down its coverage. Other black newspapers followed suit. The Double V campaign continued in the hearts of black Americans, but it disappeared from the headlines. After the war, Hoover turned his attention to civil rights leaders. He investigated W.E.B. Du Bois. He investigated Paul Robeson. He investigated A. Philip Randolph. Later, he would investigate Martin Luther King Jr. and try to blackmail him into suicide. Hoover's FBI didn't just suppress the Double V campaign during the war, it suppressed the memory of the campaign after the war. Files were sealed, documents were classified, reports were buried. When historians tried to research the Double V campaign decades later, they found that crucial FBI documents had been destroyed or were unavailable. The surveillance files still exist, but much of what the FBI did to suppress black activism during World War II remains hidden. Second, legal suppression. The military used courts-martial as a weapon to control black soldiers. We've already talked about Jackie Robinson and the Port Chicago 50, but they weren't isolated cases. Thousands of black soldiers were court-martialed during World War II for offenses that white soldiers routinely got away with. A study after the war showed that black soldiers were 3 times more likely to be court-martialed than white soldiers for the same infractions. Black soldiers received harsher sentences. They were more likely to be dishonorably discharged, and dishonorable discharge meant losing everything. No GI Bill, no veterans benefits, no government loans, no access to veterans hospitals. A dishonorable discharge followed you for life. It showed up on job applications. It disqualified you from professional licenses. It marked you as a criminal. The military knew this. They used courts-martial to punish black soldiers who challenged segregation, who spoke up about discrimination, who demanded their rights. And after the war, those dishonorable discharges ensured that black veterans couldn't access the benefits that white veterans used to build middle-class lives. The GI Bill passed in 1944 is considered one of the greatest pieces of legislation in American history. It provided returning veterans with college tuition job training, unemployment benefits, and low-interest home loans. The GI Bill created the white middle class. It allowed millions of white veterans to buy homes in the new suburbs, go to college, start businesses. It transformed America. But black veterans were largely excluded. Not officially. The GI Bill didn't explicitly discriminate by race, but its implementation did. Banks refused to give home loans to black veterans. Suburbs refused to sell houses to black families. Universities in the South refused to admit black students. The Veterans Administration, which administered the GI Bill, was complicit. VA officials would approve loans for white veterans and deny them for black veterans with better credit. By 1950, only 2% of GI Bill home loans had gone to black veterans, even though black veterans were 13% of the military. That disparity created the racial wealth gap that exists today. White families bought homes with GI Bill loans. Those homes appreciated in value. They passed that wealth to their children. Black families rented because they couldn't get loans. They built no equity. They passed no wealth to their children. This was an accident. This was legal suppression. The law said black veterans were equal. The system ensured they weren't. Third, educational erasure. This is the one that affects you most directly, because this is why you never learned about the Double V campaign in school. After World War II, school textbooks were rewritten. The war was presented as a simple story. America fought the bad guys. America won. America was the hero. That narrative required erasing complexity. It required ignoring uncomfortable truths. So the textbooks removed black soldiers from the story. Look at history textbooks from the 1950s, 60s, 70s, even the 80s. Look at how they describe World War II. You'll see chapters about D-Day, Pearl Harbor, the atomic bomb, Hitler, Churchill, Roosevelt. You might see one paragraph about black soldiers, maybe one sentence. Black Americans served in the military during World War II. That's it. No details, no names, no stories. The Tuskegee Airmen aren't mentioned. The 761st Tank Battalion isn't mentioned. The Port Chicago disaster isn't mentioned. The Double V campaign definitely isn't mentioned. Well, because telling those stories would require admitting that America was segregated during the war. It would require explaining Jim Crow to children. It would require talking about racism, and white America didn't want to do that. So they erased it. They taught the war as if race didn't matter, as if black soldiers and white soldiers fought side by side as equals, as if America was the land of the free while it fought for freedom. The textbooks lied by omission, and it wasn't just textbooks, it was museums. The Smithsonian didn't have a major exhibit on black soldiers in World War II until the 1990s. It was monuments. Most World War II memorials don't mention black soldiers specifically. It was public history. The stories that get told in documentaries and movies and TV shows. For 50 years, Hollywood made World War II movies with all-white casts as if black soldiers didn't exist. 3 generations of Americans from 1945 to 2000 grew up not knowing about the Double V campaign, not knowing about the Tuskegee Airmen, not knowing about Port Chicago. That's not accidental amnesia. That's deliberate erasure. The people who designed this erasure understood something important. If you control what children learn, you control what adults believe. If you can keep the next generation from knowing the truth dies. Every veteran who lived the Double V campaign would eventually die. If their stories weren't passed down, weren't written down, weren't taught in schools, then those stories would disappear. And that's exactly what almost happened. It wasn't until the 1990s that historians began seriously researching the Double V campaign. It wasn't until the 2000s that books started being published. It wasn't until the 2010s that some schools started including it in curricula. That's 70 years of silence. 70 years of erasure. 2 or 3 entire generations who never heard the story. And here's the most insidious part. When the story finally started being told, it was framed as ancient history. Something that happened a long time ago. Something that's been resolved. We don't do that anymore. We've moved past that. America's better now. But that framing is a lie, because the consequences of what happened during World War II are still affecting you today. Right now, in 2025. Fourth, media manipulation. The white press ignored the Double V campaign during the war and erased it after the war. Major newspapers like the New York Times and the Washington Post barely covered it. When they did mention it, they called it Negro agitation or black radicalism. They framed it as a problem, not as patriotic Americans demanding their rights. The Port Chicago disaster was covered by white newspapers, but the story they told was different from the truth. White newspapers reported the explosion as a tragic accident. They emphasized that white officers died too. They downplayed the fact that 100% of the men loading ammunition were black. And when the Port Chicago 50 were tried for mutiny, white newspapers called them cowards. The story said the men were using the disaster as an excuse to avoid dangerous work. They said the men panicked. They said the men were undisciplined. The black press told the truth. The Pittsburgh Courier, the Chicago Defender, the Baltimore Afro-American reported on the trial on Thurgood Marshall's involvement on the injustice of the convictions. But the black press reached black audiences. White America never saw those stories. And after the war, as the black press declined in circulation, those stories became harder to find. Hollywood played a huge role in the erasure. World War II movies were made constantly from the 1940s through the 1990s. Hundreds of films about the war, and almost none of them featured black soldiers. When black characters appeared at all, they were in the background. Servants, cooks, comic relief, never heroes, never central to the story. It wasn't until 1995 that a movie about the Tuskegee Airmen was made, and that was a TV movie on HBO, not a major theatrical release. It wasn't until 2008 that a movie called Miracle at St. Anna told the story of the 92nd Infantry Division. These movies came 50 and 60 years after the war. By then, most of the veterans had died. Why did Hollywood ignore black soldiers for so long? Because telling their stories would require showing segregation. It would require depicting racism in the American military. It would complicate the narrative of the good war. It would force audiences to confront uncomfortable truths. So they didn't tell those stories. They made John Wayne movies about white soldiers saving the world. They made movies where America was purely heroic. They lied. And the lies worked. Ask most Americans today what they know about black soldiers in World War II. Most will say they've heard of the Tuskegee Airmen, maybe. Some will vaguely remember that black soldiers served. Almost none will know about the Double V campaign. Almost none will know about Port Chicago. The erasure was so successful that the history is still mostly unknown. But here's why this matters. Now, here's why you need to understand how they covered it up. Because they're still doing it. The same tactics they used to suppress the Double V campaign, are being used today to suppress black voices demanding justice. Surveillance, legal harassment, educational control, media manipulation. The tools are more sophisticated now. Social media algorithms instead of FBI files. But the goal is the same. Silence resistance, control the narrative, protect the system. So let me connect the dots for you. Let me show you how the Double V campaign from 1942 created the world you live in today. Because this isn't ancient history, this is your inheritance. July 26, 1948. President Harry Truman signed Executive Order 99981. The order stated, "It is hereby declared to be the policy of the President that there shall be equality of treatment and opportunity for all persons in the armed services, without regard to race, color, religion, or national origin." With the stroke of a pen, Truman desegregated the United States military. It was the first time since Reconstruction that the federal government took major action to end racial discrimination. And it happened because of the Double V campaign. Here's how. When World War II ended, 1,200,000 black veterans came home. They had fought in Europe. They had fought in the Pacific. They had seen Paris and Rome and Tokyo. They had been treated with respect by people in other countries. And then they came home to Jim Crow. They came home to a country where they couldn't vote in the South, couldn't eat in most restaurants, couldn't get loans to buy homes, couldn't get jobs equal to their skills. They had risked their lives for America, and America spat in their faces. But something had changed. These veterans weren't the same men who had left in 1942. They had tasted equality, even if only briefly. They had proven themselves in combat. They had killed fascists in Germany. They weren't going to tolerate fascism in Georgia anymore. Black veterans became the backbone of the civil rights movement. Medgar Evers, Amzie Moore, Hosea Williams, Aaron Henry. All World War II veterans. All civil rights leaders. They used the organizing skills they learned in the military. They used the discipline they developed under fire. They used the courage they gained from facing death. And they started organizing in the South. In 1946, black veterans tried to register to vote in Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama. Many were beaten. Some were killed. In 1946 alone, at least 6 black veterans were lynched for trying to vote, or for talking back to white people, or for wearing their uniforms in public. The Ku Klux Klan saw black veterans as a threat. They were right. In 1948, A. Philip Randolph, the same man who had threatened a march on Washington in 1941 to demand jobs in defense plants, issued another threat. He told President Truman that if the military didn't desegregate, black Americans would resist the draft. He said black men would go to prison rather than serve in a segregated military. He said, "We fought one war in uniform. We're not fighting another until America treats us like citizens." Truman was facing an election. He needed black votes in northern cities. He also had advisors who told him segregation in the military was immoral and inefficient. The Army was struggling to fill its ranks. The Cold War was beginning, and America needed a strong military. Segregation meant duplication of facilities, inefficient use of manpower, lower morale. It wasn't just wrong, it was impractical. So Truman signed Executive Order 9981, and over the next 6 years, the military slowly desegregated. By the Korean War, which started in 1950, black soldiers and white soldiers were fighting in integrated units for the first time in American history. Why does this matter? Because the military became the first major American institution to integrate. Before schools, before buses, before restaurants, before anything else. The military proved that integration worked. White soldiers and black soldiers fought together, lived together, ate together. And the military didn't collapse. Performance improved, morale improved, efficiency improved. This created a model for the rest of the country. When the Supreme Court ruled in Brown versus Board of Education in 1954 that school segregation was unconstitutional, opponents said integration would destroy schools. But the military had already proven them wrong. When civil rights activists pushed to integrate buses and restaurants, and hotels, opponents said it would cause chaos. But the military had already proven them wrong. The desegregation of the military was the first domino. And it fell because of the Double V campaign. Because black soldiers had demanded equality while fighting for their country. Because black veterans came home and refused to accept second-class citizenship. Because the logic of the Double V, you can't fight fascism abroad while practicing it at home, was undeniable. Now let me show you the second connection. The Double V campaign created the civil rights movement. Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama on December 1, 1955. That refusal sparked the Montgomery bus boycott, which launched the modern civil rights movement. But Rosa Parks didn't act alone. She was part of a network, the NAACP, the Women's Political Council, and many of the people in that network were World War II veterans or their family members. Remember Jackie Robinson? He refused to move to the back of a military bus in 1944, 11 years before Rosa Parks. He was court-martialed and acquitted. His story was known in black communities. It was inspiration. It was proof that resistance was possible. The Montgomery bus boycott was led by a young preacher named Martin Luther King Jr. King was too young to have served in World War II, but his congregation was full of black veterans. Those veterans provided security for King. They organized logistics for the boycott. They drove cars in the carpool system that replaced the buses. They brought military discipline and organization to the movement. Throughout the South in the 1950s and 60s, civil rights organizations were led by World War II veterans. These men had seen combat. They weren't intimidated by the Klan. When white supremacists threatened black communities, these veterans armed themselves and fought back. Robert F. Williams in North Carolina, Charles Sims in Louisiana. They formed defense groups to protect black neighborhoods from Klan violence. The civil rights movement wasn't just nonviolent protest. That's the sanitized version you learned in school. The full truth is that the movement combined nonviolent direct action with armed self-defense, and the men providing that armed defense were often World War II veterans who had internalized the Double V message. We fought for freedom abroad. We'll fight for freedom at home. The March on Washington in 1963, where Martin Luther King delivered his "I Have a Dream" speech, was organized by A. Philip Randolph, the same man who threatened to march on Washington in 1941, the same man who pressured Truman to desegregate the military in 1948. Randolph understood that the struggle started during World War II was continuing. The Double V hadn't been achieved yet. Victory abroad had happened. Victory at home was still being fought for. Every major civil rights victory of the 1950s and 60s has roots in the Double V campaign. The philosophical framework that demanding justice is patriotic came from Double V. The organizational networks came from black veterans. The courage to face violence came from men who had faced death in combat. The refusal to accept gradualism came from people who had waited long enough. Now let me bring it to today. Let me show you how the Double V campaign affects your life right now in 2025. The wealth gap between black and white families exists because of what happened to Double V veterans. In 1945, the median white family and the median black family had similar wealth levels. Both were poor. The Depression had wiped out most Americans. But over the next 30 years, white families built wealth and black families didn't. Why the GI Bill? White veterans used it to buy homes in the suburbs. Those homes cost $15,000 in 1950. Today, those same homes are worth $500,000. That's wealth. That's inheritance. That's what white families passed to their children and grandchildren. Black veterans were denied those loans. They couldn't buy homes in white suburbs because of redlining and restrictive covenants. They couldn't buy homes in black neighborhoods because banks wouldn't lend there. So they rented. Renting builds no equity. When those black veterans died, they had nothing to pass to their children. Today in 2025, the median white household has about $190,000 in wealth. The median black household has about $24,000. That 8-to-1 ratio exists because of the GI Bill discrimination after World War II. Your grandfather was denied a loan in 1948. So your father couldn't inherit a house. So you can't inherit wealth. The theft that happened to V veterans is still stealing from you today. Here's another connection: mass incarceration. The United States has the highest incarceration rate in the world. Black Americans are incarcerated at 5 times the rate of white Americans. Why? One reason is the criminalization of black resistance that started during World War II. The Port Chicago 50 were convicted of mutiny for demanding safety. That set a precedent. Black people who resist unjust systems are criminals. That logic continued after the war. Civil rights protesters were arrested for disturbing the peace. Black power activists were surveilled and imprisoned by the FBI. The war on drugs started in the 1970s, targeted black communities specifically. The result is 2.3 million people in prison, a hugely disproportionate number of them. Black, the same system that court-martialed Jackie Robinson and convicted the Port Chicago 50, is the same system that fills prisons with black men today. It's the same logic. Resistance equals crime. Demanding rights equals disruption. The system protects itself by criminalizing those who challenge it. Here's one more: police brutality. The militarization of police departments started after World War II. White veterans came home and became cops. They brought military tactics with them. They brought military weapons. They brought a warrior mentality. And they brought their racism. In the 1960s, police departments in the South functioned as paramilitary forces, suppressing civil rights protesters. Dogs, fire hoses, batons, tear gas. They treated black Americans, demanding their rights, as enemy combatants. That mentality never went away. It evolved. It became standard police practice in black neighborhoods. Aggressive patrol, stop and frisk, excessive force. When George Floyd was killed in 2020, when Breonna Taylor was killed in 2020, those weren't isolated incidents. Those were the latest casualties in a war that's been going on since 1619, but that took its modern form during World War II. The same system that allowed 202 black sailors to die at Port Chicago without accountability is the same system that allows police to kill unarmed black people without accountability. Do you see the connections now? Do you see how the V campaign is still relevant? The fight those soldiers started in 1942 isn't over. Victory abroad was achieved. Victory at home is still incomplete. The wealth gap, mass incarceration, police brutality. These are the modern battles in the same war. Your grandfather fought this fight. Your grandmother survived this fight. Now it's your turn, and you have something they didn't have. You have the truth, because for 75 years they buried this history. They erased these stories. But now you know. Now you understand. Now you can finish what they started. So let me tell you who you are. Let me tell you what's in your blood. Because they lied to you about your identity. They told you that you're descendants of victims. They told you that your ancestors were helpless. They told you that your history is slavery and oppression and suffering. That's a lie. You are descendants of warriors. Your great-grandfather didn't bow to Jim Crow. He put on a uniform and fought 2 wars at once. He flew through flak over Germany knowing that if he survived, he'd come home to a country that wouldn't let him vote. He drove a tank through Belgium in the winter, knowing that if he lived, he'd come home to a country that wouldn't let him buy a house. He loaded ammunition at Port Chicago, knowing it might explode, and when it did, knowing that the Navy would blame him for it. Your great-grandfather was a warrior. He fought the Nazis in Europe and the Klan in America. He fought legal segregation and economic discrimination and educational exclusion. And he won. Not completely. Not perfectly. But he moved the line. He pushed the boulder up the hill. He made it possible for you to be where you are today. You are not a victim. You are the descendant of people who survived genocide. The Middle Passage killed millions. Slavery killed millions more. Jim Crow lynched thousands. World War II sent 1,200,000 black men into combat, and hundreds of thousands didn't come home. But you are here. Your family survived all of that. That survival is not luck. That's strength. That's resilience. That's divine protection. You are not weak. You are the genetic descendant of the strongest people in human history. Weak people didn't survive the Middle Passage. Weak people didn't survive slavery. Weak people didn't survive Jim Crow. Weak people didn't fly through anti-aircraft fire over Germany. Your ancestors were the strong ones. That strength is coded in your DNA. It's in you right now. You are not inferior. They told your grandfather he wasn't smart enough to fly a plane. He became a Tuskegee Airman and shot down German fighters. They told your grandfather he wasn't brave enough to fight. He joined the 761st Tank Battalion and fought for 183 days straight. They told your grandfather he wasn't disciplined enough to handle responsibility. He loaded ammunition at Port Chicago until it killed him. Every accusation of inferiority was proven false. By your ancestors, with their blood and their courage. So when someone tells you that you can't achieve something because of your race, remember the Tuskegee Airmen. When someone tells you that the system is too powerful to fight, remember the Double V campaign. When someone tells you to wait your turn, remember that your grandfather didn't wait. He demanded. And he won. Now let me tell you about the people you need to remember. Say these names out loud. James Gratz Thompson, the man who wrote the letter that started it all. Benjamin O. Davis, Jr., the Tuskegee Airman who became the first black general in the Air Force. Thurgood Marshall, the lawyer who defended the Port Chicago 50 and became the first black Supreme Court justice. Jackie Robinson, the soldier who refused to sit at the back of the bus before he broke the color barrier in baseball. Say the names of the Port Chicago 50. I'm going to list some of them. Joe Small, Freddie Meeks, Cyril Shepard, Jack Crittenden, Robert Ruth, Martin Bordenave, Alfonso McPherson, Ollie Green, Percy Robinson. These men were convicted of mutiny for demanding safety. They spent years in prison. They died without being pardoned. Their names should be taught in every school in America. Say their names. Honor their memory. Your ancestors built empires. Before slavery in Africa, black civilizations built universities, created art, developed mathematics. During slavery, black people built the wealth of America. The cotton that funded the Industrial Revolution was picked by black hands. After slavery, black people built thriving communities. Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Rosewood in Florida, thriving black towns across the country. And every time black people built wealth, it was destroyed. But the fact that they kept building proves their strength. During World War II, black soldiers helped save the world from fascism. They fought with honor. They served with distinction. They earned hundreds of thousands of medals, though many weren't awarded until decades later. They proved that courage has no color. They proved that excellence has no race. They proved that America's enemies were wrong about race, which meant America was wrong about race, too. And after the war, those veterans came home and started a revolution. They integrated the military. They launched the civil rights movement. They broke down legal segregation. They passed the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. They opened doors that had been closed for centuries. Every freedom you have today, they fought for. Every opportunity you have today, they bled for. You are the answer to their prayers. When your great-grandmother prayed at night after a day of being treated as less than human, she prayed for you. She prayed that her grandchildren would live in a better world. She prayed that her sacrifices would mean something. She prayed that one day her descendants would be free. You are that descendant. You are her answered prayer. You are living the future she could only dream of. Don't waste it. Don't squander it. Don't take it for granted. Honor her sacrifice by living with purpose. Honor her sacrifice by continuing the fight. Now let me talk about God's plan in all of this. Because your ancestors understood something that we sometimes forget. This fight is spiritual, not just political. This battle is cosmic, not just social. God didn't preserve your ancestors through the Middle Passage by accident. God didn't bring them through slavery for no reason. God didn't sustain them through Jim Crow randomly. God had a purpose. That purpose was to create a people who would be a witness to the world. A witness that even in the darkest oppression, humanity can rise. A witness that injustice will not stand forever. A witness that truth is more powerful than lies. Your ancestors were chosen for this mission, not because they were black, but because they were willing to suffer, willing to fight, willing to hope when hope seemed impossible. God looked at the African people being enslaved and said, "These people will survive." And not just survive. They will overcome. They will become a light to the nations. The Double V campaign was spiritual warfare. It was black Christians saying, "We believe in the God who freed the Israelites from Egypt. We believe in the God who brought down Pharaoh. We believe in the God who makes a way out of no way. We believe that if God is for us, no one can stand against us. And we're going to act on that belief." When Tuskegee Airmen flew into combat, they prayed before missions. When the 761st Tank Battalion rolled into battle, they carried Bibles in their tanks. When the Port Chicago 50 stood trial, they sang hymns in their cells. They knew that the battle wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. And they knew that God was on the side of justice. God preserved you for such a time as this. You were born in 2025, not 1925, for a reason. You have access to information your ancestors couldn't imagine. You have platforms they never had. You have legal rights they died for. God gave you all of that for a purpose. To finish the work they started. To tell the truth they couldn't tell. To build the world they could only dream of. Your mission isn't revenge. Your mission is revelation. Reveal the truth that was buried. Demand the recognition that was withheld. Build the future that was stolen. God gave you ancestors who could survive anything. Use that strength. God gave you a story of resistance and victory. Tell that story. God gave you a future. Claim it. Walk in the authority of your heritage. You are descended from people who faced Hitler's Luftwaffe and Jim Crow's lynch mobs and never broke. You carry that same spirit. When life gets hard, when the system pushes back, when people tell you to give up, remember who you come from. Remember the Tuskegee Airmen. Remember the 761st. Remember the Port Chicago 50. Remember James G. Thompson, who asked one question and started a revolution. You have that same power. Your voice matters. Your truth matters. Your resistance matters. Don't let anyone silence you. Don't let anyone make you small. Don't let anyone tell you that demanding justice is radical or divisive or unpatriotic. Your grandfather demanded justice while wearing an American uniform and facing death. You can demand justice from the safety of your home. If he could do it, then you can do it now. So here's what I need you to do. This video ends, but your mission begins. First, subscribe to this channel. We're exposing hundreds more stories just like this. Stories they erased from the textbooks. Stories they buried in archives. Stories your ancestors lived and your children need to know. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss them. Second, share this video. Share it with your family. Share it with your church. Share it with your children and grandchildren. Share it with people who think they know history, but only know the sanitized version. Share it with people who don't understand why Black Americans are still fighting for justice. This video explains why. The theft didn't end in 1865. It didn't end in 1965. It's ongoing. And the only way to stop it is to reveal it. Third, tell these stories yourself. Don't wait for the school system to teach it. Don't wait for Hollywood to make a movie. You tell it. Talk to your children about James G. Thompson. Tell them about the Tuskegee Airmen. Explain why the Port Chicago 50 were heroes, not criminals. Pass down the truth, because that's the only way truth survives. They tried to erase this history by keeping it out of textbooks. Don't let them succeed. You are the keeper of this truth now. Fourth, demand action. Demand that the Port Chicago 50 be pardoned. Their convictions still stand. That injustice is still unrectified. Write to your representatives. Sign petitions. Make noise. The Navy apologized in 1994 but didn't overturn the convictions. That's not justice. That's public relations. Demand justice. Demand reparations. Not just for slavery. For the GI Bill discrimination. For redlining. For the systematic theft of wealth from Black veterans after World War II. The wealth gap exists because they stole your inheritance. They owe you. Your grandfather earned it with his blood. You have the right to claim it. Demand that schools teach this history. Show up at school board meetings. Ask what your children are learning about World War II. Ask if they're learning about the Double V campaign. Ask if they're learning about segregation in the military. If they're not, demand that they do. History without the full truth is propaganda. Fifth, live with purpose. Your ancestors didn't survive genocide so you could live small. They didn't fight 2 wars so you could give up when life gets hard. They didn't face death so you could waste your life. Honor them by being excellent. Honor them by building. Honor them by refusing to accept injustice. Honor them by finishing what they started. You are not ordinary. You carry the blood of warriors. Act like it. Walk like it. Live like it. When obstacles come, remember your great-grandfather drove a tank through German lines for 183 days straight. Your problems are not bigger than what he faced. When people doubt you, remember, the Tuskegee Airmen were told they couldn't fly and became the best pilots in the war. When the system pushes back, remember the Double V campaign faced FBI surveillance and presidential pressure and still changed America. You have that same power. You are that same people. The only difference is they didn't have a choice. You do. They had to fight. You get to choose whether to fight. Choose correctly. Choose to honor their sacrifice. Choose to continue their mission. Choose to be worthy of your heritage. Comment below what story you want us to cover next. Let me know if this video changed how you see history. Let me know if you're ready to join the truth movement. Let's build a community of people who refuse to accept the lies. People who demand the full truth. People who honor their ancestors by finishing the work. This isn't about hate. This isn't about division. This is about truth and justice. This is about reparation, not just of wealth, but of the story. They stole your history. We're taking it back. Let me pray over you before you go. Father God, we thank you for preserving this truth across 75 years of silence. We thank you for the courage of James G. Thompson, who asked one question and started a revolution. We thank you for the 1,200,000 black soldiers who fought 2 wars at once. We thank you for the Tuskegee Airmen who flew through flak and racism and never turned back. We thank you for the 761st Tank Battalion who fought 183 days straight for a country that wouldn't let them eat in a restaurant. We thank you for the 92nd Infantry Division who climbed mountains under fire while carrying the weight of prejudice. We thank you for Jackie Robinson, who refused to move to the back of the bus and later broke the color barrier. We thank you for the Port Chicago 50, who demanded safety and got prison, but never bowed. Lord, we pray for justice for those whose names were erased. We pray for recognition that was withheld. We pray for reparations for theft that spanned generations. We pray for the pardoning of the Port Chicago 50. We pray that their sacrifice will finally be honored. We pray for awakening. We pray that this generation will know their history and claim their legacy. We pray that the lies will be exposed and the truth will spread. We pray that every person watching this video will be transformed by what they've learned, that they'll see themselves differently, that they'll understand their power, that they'll step into their purpose. Bless those who seek truth in a world of lies. Strengthen those who resist erasure in a world of amnesia. Vindicate the memory of our ancestors. Give us courage to finish the fight they started. Because the Double V campaign didn't end in 1945, it continues today. Victory over injustice abroad. Victory over racism at home. Lord, we declare that every weapon formed against us will fail. Every lie told about us will be exposed. Every door closed to us will be opened. Every blessing stolen from us will be restored. We are the descendants of warriors. We are the children of survivors. We are the heirs of a legacy of resistance and victory. We will not be silent. We will not bow. We will not forget. We will tell the truth. We will demand justice. We will build the future our ancestors dreamed of. In Jesus' name, we pray. Amen. Walk in truth. Demand justice. Remember the warriors. You are the answer to their prayers. You are the generation they fought for. Don't waste it. Don't squander it. Honor them by living with purpose. Honor them by continuing the fight. Honor them by finishing what they started. The Double V campaign taught us that patriotism and protest are not opposites. They are partners. Loving your country means demanding that it live up to its promises. Serving your country means fighting to make it better. Your grandfather understood that. He lived it. Now it's your turn. Until next time, teach the truth. Honor the warriors. Finish the fight. You are not victims. You are victors. You are not the oppressed. You are the resistance. You are not the end. You are the continuation. The blood of James G. Thompson flows in your veins. The courage of the Tuskegee Airmen lives in your spirit. The strength of the Port Chicago 50 runs through your DNA. Walk like it. Live like it. Fight like it. Double V forever. Victory over injustice abroad. Victory over racism at home. God bless you. Now go change the world.